I love first-person shooters. First-person shooters have been one of my favorite video game genres since I was a kid. Nowadays, there's so many different kinds of first-person shooters, it's hard to choose one. So, today I am going to take you back to the past, and I'm going to review id Software's classic Quake for the PC, which I believe was also on the 64. I'm not sure if that was different or not, never played it. But yeah, join me today, or something. This is a terrible introduction, fuck. Quake was released on Microsoft DOS on June 22nd, 1996, and later came out on the Macintosh in 1997. Was ported to many other systems, including the Sega Saturn, the Commodore Amiga, and the Nintendo 64. The story of Quake is the player takes on the role of an unnamed protagonist sent into a portal in order to stop an enemy codenamed Quake. Previously, the government had been experimenting with teleportation technology, and upon development of a working prototype called a Slipgate, this enemy is compromised the human connection with their own teleportation system, using it to insert death squads into the human dimension, supposedly in order to test the material capabilities of humanity. And yes, I am stealing this all from Wikipedia. I mean, fuck, unless you read the manual, then you're not going to be able to figure out what the story is. I mean, it just throws you in there. Then again, most FPS games in the early to mid-90s did that, so, you know. Really, the first-person shooter with a huge storyline was Half-Life, yeah. It wasn't that obvious, but it was more obvious than this. I'm using the Steam version of Quake. Quake controls the WSAD keys and the mouse. And like a lot of first-person shooters in the 90s, well, particularly hit games, if anything was in the middle, you couldn't look up or down. Well, there were buttons to do that, but you didn't really use them much. But if you don't really look up or down with the mouse. You just look left and right with the mouse. And if anything's in the middle of the screen where your gun is, if you click, that's pretty much what's being shot. Similar to Doom, Duke Nukem 3D, and just FPS games in the early '90s in general. But that's beside the point. Quake has a large diversity of levels. A lot of them are really neat and creative. I like their really dark style. Very similar to Doom, this game you have to go around collecting keys so you can open doors. So that's pretty much what you did in the early 90s. I mean, like I said, Half-Life was the first-person shooter I've ever played that was a lot different from this. As far as graphics goes, this game is pretty visually pleasing to look at. And the graphics, I'd say they're top-notch for 1996, at least in my standards. The graphics are a futuristic-style medieval graphics. They're dark and mysterious, and, yeah, pretty medieval. But at the same time, it's a bit futuristic-y, and, you'll have your basic id Software stuff with Satan symbols everywhere and blood on the walls. Sometimes it's kind of neat. But other than that, yeah, it's a pretty visually pleasing game to look at. As far as gameplay goes, it's the reason why I love 1990s first-person shooters. Fast-paced, bullet-hell twitch shooters. I don't know why, but I just find them so fun to play. I actually prefer unrealistic shooters to realistic shooters, and what's actually kind of neat is if you play enough unrealistic shooters, you'll actually be better at realistic shooters, at least from what I've seen. Well, guys, that's pretty much my review of Quake. I know it was kind of short, but there's not really much to say. I mean, it's Quake. The game speaks for itself. Would I recommend it? I would recommend it to anyone who's into 1990s twitch shooters that are unrealistic and just bullet hell fun to play. If you're really into realistic shooters and you don't like unrealistic shooters much, I'd give it a try, but I'd more so recommend it to the people who like unrealistic shooters. But if you do like realistic shooters, I'd give it a try, see if you like it or not. But to anyone who likes unrealistic shooters, you'll love this game. Go buy it. It's like $10 on Steam right now, I believe. I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah, that's about it. See ya.